is Michaela. I'm one of the counselors at Moon Prep, and also
I'm Nicole, another one of the counselors at Moon Prep.
welcome to our scholarship presentation tonight. I know that you all are really busy. I know there's a lot of, college application deadlines happening in November. So whether or not you just kind of got over a big group of college applications being submitted, or if you have a few ahead of you, November 15th, I just want to thank you for being here and wanting to choose to spend your evening with us. We're going to be tackling the subject of scholarships tonight, which is kind of a personal interest for both myself and Nicole. We know how much, we're building college lists with our students every single year, and we know how much that financial factor is really a big piece of the college admissions puzzle and really can ultimately determine where students end up attending when they're making their final decisions. So that's why we're just excited to share our strategies in how to find and really hunt down the maximum number of scholarships to be able to attend the colleges of the college of your dreams. And we know that it's not the goal of a college because it's a business like other businesses. It's not their goal to make their education free, but that doesn't mean it can't be a big goal for your family to make colleges as affordable as possible. And that's what we are here to do. Our partnerships with our students are so personalized that we're working with scholarships and scholarship lists all the time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. Nicole can tell you a little bit about herself afterwards and kind of what we're going to be in, what you're going to be in store for today. And then we will jump right into all of the content. So I am probably when I was going through college, I was probably in the boat that many people are in. I was applying to a lot of out of state schools, but ended up staying in state kind of in the last minute, honestly, because of financial reasons. So I pursued kind of more scholarships also to make that even more affordable, to kind of like make my choice worth it, basically. And, I pretty much like to put things into perspective for you, I graduated college with like less than $10,000 in loans. My husband was not that lucky. And then, of course, since graduating from that university, I worked as a staff writer for a national magazine, also as an honors recruiter and admissions counselor for a Big Ten conference university. But also, I had the opportunity through a couple of my roles to sit on multiple local scholarship committee boards where I was able to kind of see what they were looking for in their applicants. And that's kind of what I want to bring to all of you today. And now I spend my time with students through Moon Prep. And I'll tell you about Moon Prep here in a second. But Nicole, do you want to share a little bit about
Yeah,
yourself?
yeah, absolutely. So I started my career in higher education at Hofstra University, working as a financial aid counselor. I then transitioned to become a school counselor at a high school where I'm the scholarship committee chair doing that. And now I work at Moon Prep primarily helping students with their college applications and that timeline. And this is just kind of the next piece in that timeline that you're probably getting to the end of.
Exactly. So let me tell you a little bit about Moon Prep just really quickly, and then we'll jump into all of the information. And also, as we talk, please send in your questions. We will answer them kind of throughout. So please feel free to send in anything you have if you have questions about your specific situation, I guess. But just to know about like who Moon Prep, what Moon Prep is, we are made up of a kind of variety, a really good, great core group of counselors that all come from a variety of professional backgrounds, like admissions counselors like myself, ACT, SAT prep tutors, professional writers, guidance counselors, sorry, school counselors. And so the cool thing is when you work with one of us, you're working with all of us, and we all come from such interesting backgrounds and work so well together that you're really benefiting from kind of a team of just people with incredible experience, our collective experience. And another thing I love about kind of our perspective is at Moon Prep is how often we're trying to connect with new families. We're finding new ways, like free webinars like this, or posting ask me anything sessions on Reddit. We're always doing kind of fun things to let people kind of have access to our advice for free. So, and then just a little bit, about Moon Prep specifically. We have flexible packages to help students with anything they need, from applying to scholarships like this or building a college list, applying to every college on their list, whether or not it's like medical schools or traditional undergrads or any major under the sun. We're just kind of here for all of our students, and we work one-on-one with students, never in a group setting, really creating an individualized plan to tackle your goals and get those acceptance letters to the top schools on your list. So we'll have kind of some contact information at the end, but if you are interested in working with us, even just to help find some scholarships, feel free to email us, and we would love to help you with anything you need. So we want to switch to the next screen. We're going to kind of cover today one of my favorite topics in the whole admissions process, or the whole admissions cycle, I guess, and that's scholarships. Scholarships truly were a missing puzzle piece for me in my college journey. I probably could not have graduated on time with, kind of paying for college every single semester. I would have been working, multiple jobs and not able to graduate on time without scholarships. And so I was sitting in a situation probably very similar to some of you on this webinar. And so that is something that, we have a heart for helping students afford and attend college in general. And we're going to be kind of covering a lot of information that's also found in our free scholarship course. So just so you know, we're going to kind of put a link to that at the end, but we do have a free scholarship course to help you as well. So today we're going to be discussing the types of scholarships available and how each of these categories really affect the final price tag on your top schools, not like what they put out on the website, but like what you're actually paying. Where to look for outside scholarships, and I feel like that's where a lot of people get really stuck, and also how to create an organized scholarship list that just really guides you through the process of applying to scholarships, just so it makes it really, really simple. And then also, finally, what scholarship committees are kind of looking for in applicants. And we have a lot of material to get through, so I can really only answer a limited number of questions, but we'll pause throughout to answer some questions. But then, of course, if you have any questions about things outside of the realm of scholarships, send them in anyway, and we'll see if we can answer them, like over email or anything like that. If you have any international scholarship questions, please know we do have a slide later on that talks specifically about international admissions. So kind of maybe wait until after that slide before sending in any questions, because typically we'll cover a lot of the same information that you might be asking in a question.
Yeah, and I'm monitoring the chat for questions also. So we can come back to those whenever, if we don't answer them at some point.
Perfect. And we do have, I see a question here about the FAFSA. We do have a slide kind of talking about that. So I promise we're going to get to that question. So why do I need scholarships? Really, the first thing to really know about why scholarships are important in the first place is understand like the bigger picture about how tuition and scholarships are priced. And this is something that I kind of really cover in our scholarship course, but it's truly just like never in a college's best interest to make attending their college completely free. So they do things like they research their prices, and then they participate in need-based aid programs like the FAFSA or the CSS Profile. And then all those components together kind of allow families to afford their tuition. So every year there are colleges that send out, like Case Western does this, sends out, like, I feel like I'm going to say this wrong, but sends out a letter that says, we meet 100% of students' need, and that's like very true. And most colleges do that. Like a lot of colleges kind of claim like, we'll give all the scholarships you could need, and that's also kind of like what most colleges do. Do you agree, Nicole? Like I feel like sometimes I hear that from colleges, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, like most colleges do meet what you have to need, what you need. Um, Nicole, I think like popped out, but that's okay. So,
No, that's okay. I wasn't sure if you could hear me when my camera
no,
is not in view. I
that's
guess
okay.
not. Yes, that is a classic line that they
Mhm.
will use for kind of marketing, you could
Yeah.
say, where we will meet up to 100%
Mhm.
or so I think that kind of comes in with the question of is it necessary to fill in the FAFSA for merit aid
Mhm.
or for merit aid, do you still have to apply for the FAFSA? We'll definitely get into it a little bit more, but I always say yes to do
Mhm.
it because there's different buckets and they could be off merit or for financial need to kind of
Mhm.
close and bridge that gap. So every scholarship model is a little bit different at every school, but I always just do say yes, fill it out.
Mhm.
Um, but we'll dive into more of the details.
Yeah, if I know it's 100% like this question, is it necessary to fill in the FAFSA if we only want merit aid? Merit scholarships, again, we'll get into this, but merit scholarships are based on your GPA and your SAT, ACT scores. And so some schools will not really give you aid unless you submit the FAFSA. Like you have to demonstrate aid before they kind of like give you any scholarships to them, just like kind of a few schools that do that. So like check with that school on what their policies are. But most of the time, the FAFSA and merit scholarships are different. However, if we're looking at like paying for college as a full plate, you know, between merit scholarships, departmental scholarships, um, and then need from like the FAFSA, those comprise like your meat, your potatoes, and your vegetable. Like, to make a full meal, being able to pay for college, you kind of have to do multiple different options just to like diversify the ways that you pay for college. And honestly, you'd be surprised at how many families thought they would not qualify for aid for the FAFSA and that they actually do. So always recommend, merit or not, fill out the FAFSA. It doesn't hurt you to do it. So just do it because it might help pay for college. And that's the most important thing on this page, is just that scholarships can bridge that gap between what your need-based aid says that you can afford and what the tuition actually is. Scholarships can bridge that gap because they can determine from the FAFSA, like, oh, they should be able to cover like $10,000 in tuition, and our tuition's only $14,000, so they're totally fine. And scholarships can bridge that gap if the FAFSA determines that they think that you can like pay for a lot more than you actually realistically think that you can pay for. And that's from your family too, just your family household. And all of this kind of adds up to, there's more to the cost of attendance than just tuition as well. As you can see on the screen, when they are talking about scholarships, all these different things, merit aid, they're talking about tuition, just walking onto their campus and enrolling in classes. So, what you have to think about too is your cost of attendance, which is tuition plus housing, plus your books, plus fees, like being able to attend or like go to the gym, just their student activities fees. I feel like student fees are usually around $1,000. So there are more things, more pieces to the puzzle than just tuition for you to go onto campus. And that's not usually when they're talking about merit aid and financial aid, they're not talking about all those pieces of the puzzle. So you need to get that chunk down, the tuition chunk down.
I think we lost Michaela. Oh, she
I'm back, sorry. So you just need to get that chunk of the equation down as much as possible to be able to confidently afford your cost of attendance. And that's what we're gonna be doing today is talking about how to find scholarships to bridge that financial gap to let you attend your dream.
all right. I guess we're having some technical difficulty issues, but that is totally fine. And she looks like she might be back, but we will. Uh, let's
I'm
see.
sorry, everyone.
No, that's okay.
We can we can go to the next.
So, as Michaela was mentioning, the merit and academic piece kind of bridges off into all different categories. So, your GPA, SAT, ACT, all that merit is awarded upon admission. So once you apply, they check out your credentials based on what you submit, and they will say, based on those credentials, this is what we are awarding you. Typically, those scholarships are renewable each year, um, depending on if you keep those requirements. And there's typically a GPA requirement, an academic piece to keep some of those merit scholarships. Hey, Michaela.
Hi.
Uh,
Okay. We'll see if I stay here.
that's okay. Um, so those are typically renewable, like we said. This is where your early admission deadlines come in, where if you are the first to apply, you are sometimes the first to get a chunk out of that bucket, out of that scholarship bucket, what they have to offer. Um, meritmore.com is a really great resource. We always tell our parents this. It breaks down the true cost of attendance. A lot of times, schools' websites are a little bit um, confusing to navigate to figure out exactly how much you're going to be paying. There's a difference between the direct costs and the indirect costs. So, meritmore.com is a really great tool to kind of it breaks it down in its simplest form, which is great and really user friendly for a lot of families.
I switched to my phone hotspot, so we'll see if I stay here.
Okay, perfect.
I'm so sorry.
So, no, it's okay. There's obviously a difference between aid at private universities and aid at state universities. State universities, typically, if you have in state tuition, they're going to be a significantly lower price than any of your private schools or your state schools that you are an out of state student at. So, understanding what the sticker price is versus the actual price, the aid sources that are available to you, and any missed opportunities. So, if you are an in state student applying to a state university, definitely make sure that you have your residency figured out, that you are proving to them that you are a state resident to get that sticker price on the tuition. Private colleges always pass out or award more merit scholarship than state universities because they have more funding and the more ability to do so. So that's where it comes in with doing the FAFSA. Sometimes you are applying for admission, they're checking out your credentials, they're giving you a merit based scholarship, but often they're looking to close that gap. Um, Michaela mentioned earlier, schools are kind of like a business where they're also looking for you just as much as you're looking for them. So they want to make it not completely free, but definitely affordable for students to come there if they want quality students to be at their university. If you are applying to a specific program as well, we typically work with a lot of students in the medical field, but if you're applying for a specific program, always check out their scholarship opportunities for that program because oftentimes they'll have other things that are specific for that type of opportunity. This is where the departmental comes in. So again, if you're applying for a specific program in the medical field or any other field, there may be an additional application step involving another potential essay or more questions that you have to fill out. So applying early really comes in handy. A lot of times, once you are accepted, they will send you another email saying, hey, apply to our honors college. Always do those secondary applications because there's always more opportunity for scholarship once you do supplemental pieces for that school.
Yes. We'll see. Yes. Okay. Is anything else? Okay. And then do we need to go in?
Additionally, any type of diversity or leadership roles that you've done, any clubs, any things that you're looking to get involved in on campus, there's often something for that. Always ask questions, get familiar with your financial aid counselor at the school. Once you're accepted, you will get a financial aid counselor and they will be the ones kind of communicating with you as far as your financial aid package. Their contact info will be in there. Always ask them, is there any athletic teams that I can, work with or work for and get scholarship? Any transfer scholarships? Always apply early and always ask questions. The time frame for applying to scholarships, we are absolutely going to get that in just a second. International students, this can be a little bit tricky. Make sure you're looking for the right school. Schools with no international application fee, schools that have international scholarships, schools that are able to accept payment from international places and what type of wire payments they accept can also be a tricky thing for international students. I worked at a university one time that only took payment from a United States bank account. So if you're an international student, make sure you have that set up and you understand the ways in which to send funds there. Departmental scholarships are usually based on research or leadership, and National Search internationalstudents.com for scholarships. And there's a few different resources down here. There we go. Just for international students to search for scholarships. But so what about the CSS Profile, work study, FAFSA, need, gift aid? You're going to hear a lot of jargon being thrown around as you're embarking on this next piece of the puzzle for you. So we're going to kind of break down what each one of those things might be. All right.
I'm here on my phone. I can't really see the screen.
Okay.
Great. I don't know. Where are we at?
So we just switched this slide. What about the CSS Profile, the FAFSA, work study, need, gift aid, all that jargon that kind of gets thrown around in the mix when we're applying for financial aid and we're done with our applications and we're ready to move forward. So the FAFSA and the CSS Profile are similar. They are applications that will qualify you for both need aid, gift aid, work study, all of those fun different pieces to the puzzle. So they're going to ask you information as far as your family, your income, your taxes, things of that nature. The FAFSA goes off of the prior year, so 2 years back. And then if there's ever a change, which there very well may have been with everything else going on, a loss in job, a loss in maybe the marital status of your family has changed, all of that can be reconsidered, but you have to do it what was originally there, and then you can contact them later on.
Yeah, and
so
it truthfully doesn't hurt anything to just apply to the FAFSA on October, like right now, like after October 1st. And that's when we really recommend applying because again, they're going to be looking at your financial information, just like Nicole said, and it's going to be kind of like involved. They're going to be asking you a lot of questions, your parents' income, everything like that. But it's needed for them to see how much they can estimate that you should be able to afford for college. Um, and a lot of people are worried that they will not qualify for need-based aid with the FAFSA. And just so you know, some schools do ask for the CSS profile, which is similar to the FAFSA, often used for kind of private schools. And this form actually has different requirements and benchmarks than the FAFSA. So some people that, did not qualify for aid at all for the FAFSA actually did qualify for aid with the CSS profile. I actually saw that with one of my students last year. So it's a very real thing. And, students that are really worried about not qualifying for need-based aid and only want to go for merit aid, but their school does accept the CSS profile or does like work with the CSS profile, I recommend really still submitting that at least at the very least. And again, it never hurts to apply. It doesn't hurt you to apply. I do recommend students apply every 4 years because you don't know like what the benchmarks and requirements and things might be changing behind the scenes at the college or kind of state national level that maybe you might not qualify for aid under the FAFSA this year, but you might in 3 years. So things can change often. And there's a lot of different things that can kind of affect this. I know, Nicole, you were mentioning some like loss of a job, change in job, but also things like how many students in your household are in college. If you have a sibling that will be attending school next year, your FAFSA like requirements and everything, or your amount you receive from the FAFSA is going to be kind of way different than just this year. So kind of keep all of those things in mind too. Any changes in the household or income at all really affect how much you can get in need-based aid. But I do recommend applying really the sooner the better. There is aid every year that goes unused with the FAFSA. There's articles in Forbes and everything every single year about how much aid went unused. But that doesn't mean that state aid can't get kind of like used up. And so I saw a trend, a very interesting trend as an admissions counselor, that the people that did apply early for the FAFSA, I feel like I saw a lot more aid underneath their names than the people that applied for the FAFSA like way in the spring. And so even if state aid isn't like running out, it's still not like maybe the whole exact pot, if that makes sense. And so apply early, it doesn't hurt. Just see kind of what you get. Um and there's also kind of like work study programs too. So this is where students can to have a campus job, and they can sometimes like the paycheck can go towards their student bill, their tuition bill, and sometimes it just comes to you as a paycheck. The one that I worked in college, I could specify that half of my checks went towards my student tuition, and then half of it would come back to me as a paycheck. And then as soon as it exhausted the amount I qualified for in work study, then it would just the whole paycheck would start coming to me just directly. So you can kind of qualify for different work study programs as well, like 3,000, 5,000, and then work a campus job. And they're usually like really easy and fun jobs. Work study is another way to supplement um, your need-based aid and scholarships and all the things. So highly recommend kind of looking for work study programs. And Nicole, I'm so sorry. I can't see the screen as far as what slide is next. I am pulling up the
That is all good. So
presentation just so I
where
can
should
see what
you
slides are next.
That's okay, and I'm just gonna stop. We can still hear you. We
Okay.
can just stop view so that way we can just hear each other and not have anything blocking the words. So where do I begin? Locally, start at your school. I am the scholarship coordinator at the high school that I am with, and we have tons, and you would be so surprised the amount of times that students do not know that we have a resource for these students to look at local scholarships. Other schools in the area, maybe some community colleges nearby, definitely check out locally, ask your school counselor first. Otherwise, local organizations, your YMCA, your nonprofit places, national branches of local things. Check out where your parents work, your fire department, your police department. All of those places typically have scholarships for students locally. Your local banks, your state banks, all of those places. And then nationally, these are some of the scholarship websites that we like.
Mhm.
FAFSA is probably one of the most popular, and there's a ton where you have to keep in mind locally there are going to be less students applying in the same pot, whereas nationally there's going to be a lot more. The
Mm.
other thing I definitely recommend is check out what scholarships your high school nominates students for. So, for instance, in North Carolina, there are a ton of scholarships through Chapel Hill and some of the bigger schools, and you have to be nominated by your high school to get those awards. Um, so there's typically an internal process at your high school to become the school nominee that a lot of students do not realize. So use your school counselor as a resource, ask them questions. They will definitely have something for you.
Yes. Yeah, your school counselors are an invaluable resource. Please definitely use them. Um, in my area, there are a lot of local nonprofits that offer a lot of like a wide variety of scholarships. Like there's one of the local organizations that I sat on the board of. They had like 45 scholarships, and they were not like small $200 things. Like they were $2,000, and so really look into local organizations, local nonprofits, and you'll be really surprised at what you find. And again, less competition. I I recommend, this is kind of a weird one, but I have had a few students have this as they kind of have found some scholarships this way. They actually went onto all their local news stations and radio station websites and just typed in the word scholarship to see if there was anything like being advertised on like the radio without having to like listen to hundreds of hours of radio to see if something was um, kind of being advertised. And they actually found like five for their list. And so, random fun fact, but try kind of like local media stations and radio stations as well as the local organizations and nonprofits. It's really, really helpful. Alrighty. And so we've talked about national. Are we on the scholarship deadline?
Deadlines.
Okay.
Yes. So at this point, you should be rounding out your college applications. So only about 20% of all scholarships are due in October, November. They kind of understand that this is really not your priority. Your priority are those early deadlines. Once those are done, it kind of boosts up through January and December, 30%. And then most of them, the majority, are not really due until March or April. So another timeline as far as we asked for the time frame for applying for scholarships. So that's kind of the time frame. As far as the timeline, you will fill out your FAFSA hopefully in October, the same time that you are sending in your applications, your college applications. Once you get accepted to the school, that is when the financial aid office will pull your FAFSA and start reviewing it. So you may not receive a financial aid package from your school until March,
Mhm.
typically around March, and then that's when kind of you'll have an idea of what you may still owe, and then you have an opportunity to supplement that by applying for scholarships later on.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly.
So moving forward, um,
Scholarship list.
yes,
So I recommend that every student really keep track of the scholarships they want to apply to with a scholarship list. And this is just one that I helped a student create, um, I guess like 2 years ago now. And these were a lot of like kind of local scholarships, but you can see exactly kind of like what we did. We reused all of his essays that he had written for colleges because they all had similar themes, and we kept these themes in mind as we were writing essays. Like, oh, we could talk about something with leadership in your describe an activity. That way, if any of your scholarship essays later ask for a time you demonstrated leadership, we can use that essay again really easily. So we wrote down, you can see kind of all the columns here, obviously arranged by what their deadline was, how early they're coming, and the name just to keep it just to keep it organized, the amount. And again, you can see some lower amounts on here, but it's still money towards college. If you submit an application for 30 minutes of your time, it's the best 500 bucks you ever made, right? And those can really add up. So you can see some smaller ones on here, but that's intentional. And if he won only all four of those $500 scholarships, he maybe spent 2 hours of his time, and it's well worth it. And then, of course, which essay. And for this one, we had an interesting strategy. Of course, in Google Sheets, you can create different tabs. So you can have like one sheet that's saying one thing. You can go down the bottom and create a new sheet, but in the same document. And that's where we were actually pasting in all of the essays that we wanted to use again for scholarships, so that we had the whole thing, like say that was 500 words, his why major essay. And so we knew, okay, for this one on January 15th, we just need to cut that down by 200 words and we're good to go. So we had all the essays right there. And then we would kind of like work offline, cut them down to size or add to them, and then put them back in like over to the side for that specific application. So this just like keeps you incredibly organized. You can see the essay prompts and the word counts, as well as a link to apply, because of course it's kind of like hard to like keep them. If you just Google them, you could pull up the page of a past one, a past scholarship at that company. And so just keeping the links to apply right there too. This is a way to stay incredibly organized and just make applying such a dream. With my students, I kind of recommend taking really like an hour or two every week to look for scholarships. And then once they have a solid list built, like 20 to 30 scholarships they want to apply to, then continue doing that hour or two a week, but just submitting applications. And again, your essays are done, everything's ready to go. So, other than gathering your letters of your letters a recommendation and maybe some transcripts, um, you should be able to just submit them, and it should be a really easy process. And submit them in advance too. Don't wait till January 15th to apply. Apply a week or two in advance so they have time to review, and that you've shown that you're an organized student, and that always impresses them too.
Yeah. We had another question if you want to get to that now.
Sure.
An advisor told us not an advisor has told us not applying for need-based aid might increase our chances of admissions for some schools. Is there any basis for that?
I have not ever run across a situation in which that was true. Nicole,
So
you?
it's similar to, yeah, so the timeline that I referenced earlier, admissions counselors really don't have access to your FAFSA until
Yeah.
after you have been accepted.
Mhm.
It's kind of two totally different departments.
Yes.
Um, they may be able to obviously make maybe assumptions based off where your address
Mhm.
is and things of that nature, but no, I would not say that the two are correlated at all.
No, and as an admissions counselor, I could access like their scholarship essay questions to see if like they overlapped with any of our admissions essays, like the topics, if they just reused the same essay. But I couldn't see like a determination of their scholarship. I couldn't tell any of that. And it also like would not have affected your I see what they're saying, like, oh, if we accept this student, we wouldn't have to dole out any money, and we could accept this other student, and like we'd have to pay out $50,000. And that's just not the way it works. Like colleges structure their financials in advance to know that they will be kind of giving out scholarships for different types of aid. They do all that kind of like work in advance. So I've never run across a situation in which a student's admission was jeopardized because of their financial need at all. No, honestly,
The
like
other,
having
yeah, the other
applicants,
way to look at,
I was going to say
sorry.
having applicants that are lower income kind of like boost certain things at the college. So there would be no repercussions at all from the right. I mean,
Yeah, the other thing that you could think of is the opposite side of the pendulum where schools are going to accept the amount of students that they think will come to that school that
yeah.
they have seats for. They're going to accept more than what they have seats for because they want to have
Mhm.
full capacity. There is a higher chance of a student going to a private university that has the funds to attend it without additional need. Where sometimes it may be your dream school and you may be seeing to if you can applying to see if you can get in, but ultimately once that bill comes in the mail and the financial aid package, it may not be feasible without additional scholarship. That is always a worry. So they're going to accept students based on merit, but at the same time, yes, there is definitely the idea of yes, they'll be able to afford it, so they may likely be able to come here, but it's no guarantee. I don't think that schools actually look at that
Yeah.
highly.
I was trying to think like in like a weird world if there was a way of being like, oh, well, their EFC, their expected family contribution is no. I mean, that wouldn't work. I mean, like, there's no way,
Mhm.
even if their EFC was low and they're like, wow, they're not going to get any aid, they're not going to like assume that you're not going to go there. So I don't see
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really see
Um,
I
a
don't know who
great
that
thought.
advisor was, but I would ask them for a specific example.
Mhm.
And I just have never seen that.
Yeah, mine either. Um, there is another question, but
Okay.
will amount will the amount in a 401k and a savings account impact getting aid? Yeah, those are what kind of impacts the FAFSA and the CSS profile. They're going to ask you what are your assets, um, in pretty explicit terms like that. So
Yes.
yeah, that will
And
impact federal aid.
mhm. Yeah. And the CSS profile will ask for different things like how much is how much is your mortgage and things like that. So there's like kind of more things going into that. But yes, the 401k and kind of like anywhere that you have money stashed will all be part of that equation for them.
Yeah. So some scholarship hunting tips.
Yes. So, like I kind of mentioned in that scholarship list slide, I I just say don't ever shy away from pursuing lower amounts. Here's the deal. I've worked with so many students on scholarships, and I know for a fact that a lot of students don't want to apply to um, any scholarships like less than $2,000. So there's less competition for the ones that are smaller amounts of money. So while you might be thinking like, oh, okay, $500 isn't like that's not a big deal. But again, $500 scholarships, that's a big deal. And again, the if we have the essays already written because you've written them for your colleges that you're applying to, or you've looked at like what are the most common scholarship questions like why did I choose my major? Name a time that I showed leadership. Just if you look at some very common essay questions for scholarships, you can really knock out a lot of them. And so, truthfully, applying to a scholarship shouldn't take you longer than an hour. Usually it's like 30 minutes, if not 20 minutes. And so there's no harm in making $500 in 20 minutes. If that's the best job, you'll ever have. Like, this is your one time to make, maybe potentially $1,500 in 20 minutes of your time. So this is like a really good thing to spend your time on, especially if, like, again, get into kind of a rhythm where I would just spend like 2 hours every Sunday. I'd put on a show that I had watched multiple times in the past, and I would just, like, that was my 1 hour searching for new ones, and then 1 hour applying to scholarships in that were had deadlines in the next 2 weeks, and just kind of submitting them in advance. And if you just kind of get in a habit that, like, 2 hours on Sundays or 1 hour on Sundays, like, that's your scholarship time. Nobody talks to you. It's just like what you do. Then it's so easy and you stay on top of it. And it's, like, again, the easiest job you'll ever have. Um, I also recommend creating a new email address because sometimes, like, worst case scenario, the scholarship committee can, like, send you some spam email and things like that. So I just recommend like starting a new email address. If you did start a new email address, like for colleges, college applications specifically, some people do that. You can use that same one, but just kind of like not your main account because there's potential for some spam email coming your way or something like that. Um, just like check it once a week and apply to scholarships with it. And I just recommend it just because, again, you're putting all your information out there. That always makes me nervous. Like, I haven't heard that many like like horror stories other than like really sketchy looking like local ones, or like those sweepstakes ones. I mean, the niche.com sweepstakes one is totally fine, but other ones are just like enter your email and you might get $5,000. Like, usually scholarships want to award your money based on something. So I kind of steer clear of those like super easy ones. Also, those have the most competition because there's no work. So my scholarship hunting tips is go for the applications that are a little bit of work and do your work in advance. So those longer applications aren't that big of a deal to you, and those have the least competition. And that will kind of get you the most money. That's all.
Yeah. Um, so this is our free ebook. If you go to our website, moonprep.com/resources, we have a college essay blueprint as well as recordings to our other webinars, a whole bunch of downloads, some really great resources there. So definitely check that out. We did have another question for divorced parents. Are both incomes reviewed or only the parent who claims the student on taxes? So for divorced parents or parents who were potentially never married, things like that, the parent is the person. They don't have to claim you on their taxes. It's the person that provides the most support. So that's going to be the custodial parent is the wording that they use. And it does not have to be the person that claims you on your taxes. It just has to be the one that claims to provide the most support in the last 12 months. So you could have been living with parent A up until the beginning of this school year. Now you're living with parent B. So in the last 12 months, probably parent A provided the most support. So every situation is different. If you just read the language, and the great part about the FAFSA is every single question has a little info circle,
Mhm.
little I, and it really, really breaks it down. So take your time. Don't be afraid to ask questions, but take your time and really read thoroughly through their explanations.
Yeah.
And you only have to put one parent. It could ask you for a second, it asks you, are you choosing to put both? But it only asks for one.
Mhm. And I know there are a lot of these kind of like nuanced questions, and it's like, how do I proceed? If you like, of course, you can email us and we can try to help you as much as we can. I really like the resources at edvisors.com. So not like advisors, but edvisors. Um, they're like kind of a group of financial analysts and financial, like, just like business people that put together kind of really a college website. And I highly recommend kind of just like looking through some of they have articles on literally everything you can think of. And they're just their articles are incredible. They really, I have agreed with every piece of information I've ever read on their website. And they're like one of like, I mean, if you just Google like financial advice for colleges, it's like one of the top 10 websites anyway. So it's not like it's hard to dig for, but I really have gotten a lot of, if I don't know something, that's kind of like where I search for first. Um, yes. I'm trying to think anything else. Anything else of where I go for advice? Not really, but they have a lot of good FAFSA tips on that website. So I highly, highly recommend them. And also, if you are still kind of like looking for some colleges for your list that you're looking for, like where would give me the most financial aid for my SAT score and my GPA, meritmore.com is, I cannot recommend them enough. They have a wonderful database of just like all the merit scholarships available out there. You can kind of type in your information and your state, and it'll tell you kind of like you're eligible for these scholarships. So you might be surprised at, maybe you're in Illinois, but Ohio Wesleyan will give you a $50,000 scholarship. So going there will be only $6,000. So just, check on their website too. And you might be surprised by some colleges to add to your list last minute.
Yes. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but if you have any, definitely send them our way.
We really do appreciate you guys spending your time with us. We love to talk about this stuff. Like, I feel like this is the one part of college admissions that I kind of nerd out over completely. I like scholarships a lot. And having Nicole here is a treat. I did not know much about the financial aid department when I was admissions counselor, so I really like hearing your kind of perspective on things too. I never got to see any parts of the financial aid department's like decisions or anything, so it's so fascinating.
So we did get another question. Can we apply for multiple aids? Yeah, absolutely. So you can apply to everything. Apply for the FAFSA. If your school takes the CSS profile, apply there too. Find out from each specific school about their additional scholarship opportunities that you can apply for. Yes, there's probably some state aid application depending on what state you are in. So yes.
It's the same thing of like just grabbing aid from different pots. Like, again, you don't want to put all of your money, if we're talking about like the stock market, you don't put all your money on one stock. You want to kind of diversify and put your money into different stocks. It's the same thing. It's just getting aid, like a little bit of aid from 5 different sources is better than a little bit of aid from one source. So just look at all the options we talked about today. Departmental, athletic, if that applies, honors, just like look at all the different avenues available to you, as well as external scholarships. And yeah, lots of different types of aid. Apply to them all. And work study is also technically need-based. So that is something additional need-based you can apply to without like very much extra work. It's not like somewhere else. It's within the college you're applying, you've applied to.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you spending your evening with us. And if you have any questions after this, feel free to email us, and we hope to connect with you on future webinars and keep sharing our advice.
Bye.